Thank you.
Sweet. Okay. So here in the US, Oceana focuses on sort of 5 buckets of issue areas. We fight against overfishing and offshore drilling. We want to protect species and habitat. And we also want to curb pollution. And so one of the biggest forms of pollution that we see is plastic pollution. And one of the most toxic forms of plastic pollution is plastic foam. So a little bit of 101. You may also hear it called polystyrene. Styrofoam is like an industry word, the same way that like Kleenex or Band-Aid have kind of like are a corporate name that has entered into the lexicon. So usually when we're talking about banning styrofoam, we're talking about banning the material polystyrene. And there's actually a couple different types. So usually what you would think of as like a foam cup or a takeout container is expanded polystyrene. There's also extruded and rigid, which are like what you might see as like packing materials. And polystyrene is really ubiquitous, right? So 8 million metric tons are produced a year around the world. And it's one of the most abundant forms of marine plastic pollution. It was actually the very first form of marine plastic pollution we ever sort of found when we went looking for it on a scientific level, like back in the late 60s, early 70s, when plastic production really started to skyrocket. Scientists said, ooh, I think this might be making its way into the environment. We should probably start evaluating the marine environment to see what we find. And polystyrene was sort of the first plastic material that was found. But of course, that has only gone up and expanded into other kinds of materials. So it's no secret that foam and other forms of marine plastic pollution are a huge threat to ocean wildlife. Obviously, like ingestion and just sort of like disruption of the marine habitat is a huge concern. But plastic foam in particular is like a really nefarious toxic pollutant in the marine environment. And that's because of the way that it's produced when it's that, like I said, that expanded polystyrene, like you would see in a takeout container, has lots of air added to it. So it actually acts as a sponge for other toxins that are already in the marine environment. So think like oils or other sort of like point source pollutants that are floating around in the water will get soaked up into the plastic foam, making it sort of like this super toxic material just floating around in the ocean. And then it's also just like a stress amplifier. So if marine organisms, excuse me, are already dealing with stress from like heat or ocean acidification, plastic foam and its particular chemical composition is going to sort of like make the impacts of those stressors heightened for marine organisms. And then sort of like that goes hand in hand with inhibiting growth. So because all of these stressors are sort of accumulating in the environment and on like the food chain, it will just sort of restrict the sort of growth and healthy development of individual marine organisms, which then, you know, destabilizes the whole sort of ecosystem. And like I said, we've been finding plastic foam in the marine environment basically since we started looking for it. And it's really pernicious, like it gets basically everywhere. So we found polystyrene in coastal sediments, in deep sea trenches, coastal wetlands and bays, as well as clouds in the air. And that's not really like unique to plastic foam, right? I think probably folks on this call know that microplastic particles are also found in all of those places. But polystyrene has really been around for so long that it's a really persistent marine pollutant, and it's an especially toxic one, right, because of its chemical composition. And because it's especially toxic, we also have to make sure that we really hit on the human health impacts of polystyrene. This is a really big component of Oceana's report, and I think a really important one because the sort of human health impacts of plastic writ large is becoming like a really hot topic. And I think it's important that, you know, we have like all the right information in front of us about sort of like the discrete impacts of different materials so that we can be really specific about exactly what it's doing to our bodies and our communities. So styrene, which is sort of like the building block of polystyrene, is particularly toxic to the central nervous system. Bad. That's not good. And what we kind of have to say is that it's reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen, right? So it's sort of difficult to track individual chemicals as cancer causing or not. But that's like it's a pretty certain indictment from the NIH, right? As sort of maybe like wishy-washy as it sounds. Sorry. I'm losing my voice today. So in terms of specific cancer causes, it's been linked to lymphatic cancers and leukemia, and then sort of those some of those sort of central nervous system impacts that we see are vision loss, hearing loss, and memory loss. So like really serious losses from exposure to styrene as an individual chemical component. And I just want to add to that these types of health impacts are something that we see increase 8 to 20 times for anyone who's sort of working in manufacturing with these materials. So anyone who's working in a plant that is processing polystyrene products or refining the petrochemicals to produce the building blocks are experiencing these symptoms and these illnesses 10 times over from the general public. And then one piece I wanted to add on this slide that really shocked me when I read this report for the first time is that toxic flame retardants have also been found in some plastic foam foodware, just as like an overlap of manufacturing processes and chemical additives and stuff. And hopefully we all feel like the word flame retardant sounds really scary, because it is, and we wouldn't want it anywhere near sort of the materials that we're eating off of or storing hot food in, because they can cause low birth weight, IQ loss in children, and also thyroid dysfunction. And finally, we want to be really clear that the only real available solution to plastic foam waste and pollution and sort of the downstream health impacts that it will have on people and the environment, the only real solution to those impacts is stopping the production of foam and curbing it as much as we possibly can. The industry will often offer recycling as an option, as it often does for many forms of plastics, but it's for foam in particular, it's like practically non-existent, right? So less than 1% of foam is recycled each year in the US, and that's for a lot of different reasons. One is that it's very bulky, right? It's hard to compress or even like melt down, like some of the other plastic materials that are commonly recycled in this country. It's very expensive to recycle it because it just takes a completely different process than many of the plastic materials that can be kind of recycled together. It's super lightweight, which is part of the reason that it's so inexpensive and popular, but that makes it more difficult to transport. A lot of it flies off a truck or out of a bin, a dumpster. And so it's just like harder to manage transportation to the recycling facility and to deal with that attrition. And then because so many of our foam materials are used in food service, contamination of the material can be a big problem for the recycling industry. And then all of that just sort of leads to very strict guidelines for what type of foam can be recycled, what a facility will accept. And it just, makes the whole process nearly impossible, which is why less than 1% of it is recycled each year. So it's really a false solution that's been offered by the industry, which is why, I thought I had a slide earlier, but I think it's later in the presentation. So hold that thought. I'm going to get back to that later. But it's kind of a predecessor to this report that we put together last year. We also really wanted to make sure we were getting a snapshot of the American people and sort of how they feel about foam specifically as a pollutant, plastic pollution writ large, and then sort of like what solutions we have available to it. So amazing results. 78% of US voters support national policies that reduce single-use plastic foam. So this is very high compared to what we've seen for previous polling on other types of plastic materials. Generally, like, Americans are very supportive of fighting plastic pollution and reducing it through policy. But it seems like specifically with plastic foam, they're really fired up about it, which is great. So if we zoom out a little bit, folks are clearly very concerned about the impact of plastic pollution. So 89% of registered voters are concerned about the harm to the marine environment. Almost as many are concerned about the microplastic pollution that's slopping off of it, chemical additives, and then the very low recycling rates. So that's great. Like, folks are focused on sort of like the right issue areas, right? And then when we zoom into foam, nearly just as many American voters have a similar level of concern about plastic foam itself. So 87% are concerned about harm to the marine environment. 86% are concerned about the chemical additives put into foam. And they're also here concerned about harm to communities, which I think is a really key piece, because again, as we know, like, plastic foam is a really toxic material, and it's really, really bad for the people who manufacture it, or live close to manufacturing, or live close to sort of distribution and waste management sites related to plastic foam. So we want to make sure that voters know there's a cost to people as well. And then support for policy still remains really high, which is so exciting to see. So when we look at sort of support across voters for reducing specific types of items, foam foodware has a really high level of support, right? So I would say all of these are very high. This is all like an amazing polling return. But you see, like, all the big ones: bags, bottles, toiletries. Foam is up there towards the top, which was really exciting to see. And then if we were to break that down by voter registration and their level of support for local and state policies, I think you see another really great picture, right? Which is that, like, practically half of registered voters across party lines, or no, well over half of registered voters across party lines very strongly support or somewhat support local and state policies that reduce single-use plastic foam, right? So they're eager to see this type of change in their community. And then when you zoom out to national policies, you see basically the same story, right? So, like, not only am I excited to see this in my community, but I would want this to be even like the national standard, and I wouldn't have a problem with that, right? So that to us was a really compelling sort of narrative, that people are not only concerned about this, but they recognize that policy is a great pathway to tackle it, and that doing that at all levels of government is good. So that's what we love to see. So this is the slide I was referring to earlier. With all of that polling, we know American voters are supportive of this, and with the best available science that we sort of collected into this report, it's led us to these 5 main recommendations, which can all sort of be encapsulated in the takeaway that phasing out the production and use of plastic foam is really the most effective way to tackle its pollution. And we recommend phasing out sale and distribution of any of those single-use items, implementing more reuse and refill, just like stopping the production, full stop, of single-use plastic foam. We shouldn't really have any more virgin products on the market. Offering choices to customers that are free of plastic foam, so not restricting them to sort of this one toxic option, and then exploring alternatives anywhere that plastic foam is being used, especially in or near the marine environment, like especially with docks, coolers, things like that. We want to sort of begin looking at alternatives there, since it's so close to leaching directly into the marine environment. So that is sort of my overview on our report and our sort of like policy attitudes towards plastic foam. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Oceana's campaign. So this is a very simplified little chart, but I sort of wanted to draw attention to how Virginia's great success banning plastic foam foodware feeds into sort of our vision for how to achieve a national foam foodware ban. So when we started campaigning for a national ban in earnest in 2025, we were looking at like how can we take existing state legislation that's already passed, emerging state legislation that may have legs to stand on, and the science that we've been able to pull together in-house, and how can we use that to push forward the political will of people in Congress and also people in state governments who haven't passed a foam ban yet. How can we use that to educate the public about the toxicity and the harm of this material? And how can we also sort of generate the proof of concept, right, in the states where it's already been implemented and already working? All of that, hopefully together, will sort of build the case for a national foam foodware ban. Will all sort of like feed in together. And the more that we pass regulations at the local and state levels, the more we sort of build that case, right? The more science comes out, it's all sort of like dovetailing towards that federal ban. And so I thought it would be helpful to also sort of talk about the state policy landscape. This is a screenshot from the report, and I think it's still fairly up to date. So like I said, we started campaigning in earnest in early 2025 for a federal foam ban. We were supportive of one before, but we sort of like really turned our attention to it last year. So at the beginning of last year, this was sort of like the state policy landscape we were dealing with, right? So we had 12 states plus DC with foam bans on the books. And if I don't know how easy it is to see on your screen, but if you were to look closely, you would see that almost these bans are just plastic foam foodware, and a few of them are like moving the needle towards packing peanuts, foam coolers. Some of them also include, it won't like say this in the chart, but some of them include things like meat trays, egg cartons, some of them don't, right? So we were starting with this sort of policy landscape of a good like quorum of states that had passed it, and almost all bipartisan and really popular. But we were seeing like these opportunities, right, for like what are the strongest versions of this bill at the state level, and how can we be really ambitious when rolling that out at the national level in Congress. And so with that in mind, I thought I'd also talk briefly about 3 states that we've sort of been watching over the last year and a half that are currently working through their own foam bans, for better or for worse. So first I want to talk about the good. It's very exciting and very recent, but Alaska lawmakers just passed a foam ban last month. I think it was officially signed into law by the governor. So it's like, it's real, it's on the books, and it's happening. And that was super exciting because Alaska is a very purple bipartisan state, but this bill had tons of support from both sides of the aisle. And because their neighbors to the south, Washington and Oregon, had such strong foam bans on the books that included more than just foam foodware, that was able to sort of like push the Alaska bill further and say like, look, the West Coast already has this great standard. So you have to fall in line. And they did, which was great. So that's a huge victory that we just saw in the last few months. Then you have the bad, which I think is like not bad for much longer. But Montana got very close to passing a polystyrene ban last year. And again, like really popular in the state. It's a huge like outdoor recreation state, right? Like who wants to see like a foam cup on their hike? So it had a lot of bipartisan support, it had a lot of public support, but the governor decided that he just really didn't like it. So he vetoed it at the last minute, which was a bummer. And Montana is one of those states that has alternating legislative sessions. So they're not in session this year. They won't be back until 2027. But we have really high hopes for a new champion who will really go to the mat for the bill in 2027. So it's the bad this year, but it's not all bad. I think there is like a silver lining. And then my final example is the ugly, which for better or for worse is happening in Massachusetts right now. And I think I say ugly lovingly. I think this one will also have a silver lining and will work out well. But Massachusetts is a really interesting case study for this kind of legislation because it's a very progressive state. So much of it is coastal. So people really care about ocean and water health. They really care about pollution. And because of that, Massachusetts already has foam bans on the books in almost every locality and county. So getting something passed at the state level has proven actually really difficult. You would think it would be like a no-brainer, like, oh yeah, let's just make this statewide. But instead they have this kind of like patchwork of legislation across localities. And the governor is a pretty ambitious environmentalist. So she wants to like look for the best and strongest sort of environmental objectives with her bond bill every year. And foam is not always super high on her priority list. So this headline that I have screenshotted here is like actually a little outdated. So back in April, the Senate passed one version of the governor's bond bill that is meant to specifically tackle like environmental and climate issues, and included a lot of great stuff to tackle waste and plastic pollution specifically. But through some like amendment processes in the last few weeks, they managed to tack on a statewide polystyrene ban to a newer version of the bill, which hadn't even made the news yet when I made this presentation. But I think it's like a really cogent example of how these state level fights are kind of kooky. And I know Virginia's was for sure. So like, I hope anyone who fought hard for that win feels solidarity from like all these other states that are sort of struggling to get it together too. But yeah, I think, you know, in the end, it just is a really common sense policy position. And again, it's really popular, it's bipartisan. So eventually we prevail and we can prove that that it's really a no-brainer. So again, all of that is hopefully feeding towards our goal of one day passing a national foam ban. And we have something moving through Congress right now that was introduced last year in March called the Farewell to Foam Act. And to sort of go back to like that spread of state bills, this federal version is really like sort of the most comprehensive, most ambitious foam phase out we could ask for, which is really cool. It's great to like, you know, shoot for the moon. And if you miss, like you still get something pretty awesome. So the Farewell to Foam Act would ban the manufacturing, distribution, and sale by 2028 of expanded polystyrene coolers, not any used for medical transport, but like the kind that you would buy like at the gas station on the way to a fishing trip or at the grocery store. It would ban many types of foam foodware items like takeout containers, plates, bowls, cups, meat trays, and egg cartons. And it would also ban packing peanuts, which are a really tough pollutant to manage. So we're really excited about the Farewell to Foam Act. It's not necessarily the talk of the town on the Hill. There's a lot of stuff taking up people's time and attention in Congress and in DC, as you can imagine. But given sort of like the timing, it's still grown a lot since its introduction, which is really exciting. And hopefully Virginia's foam ban going into effect in July will be like a really great opportunity to celebrate the popularity of this type of legislation and the need for it at the federal level. So I just wanted to wrap up with a few sort of rapid fire resources. So this is like my QR code moment. And if that doesn't work for you, because I didn't want to just like paste a bunch of URLs onto the slides, just let me know in the comments if there's something particular you'd like a link for, and I can paste it in the chat after I'm done. But two reports I wanted to highlight on expanded polystyrene and ocean health specifically. Of course, Oceana's, which I encourage everyone to check out. It's a really great read. It's a really beautiful report. And I think very timely. And then Ocean Conservancy also has a really awesome report called What the Foam that uses a lot of their international coastal cleanup data to sort of show where foam is being found on beach cleanups and sort of whether and how foam bans at the state and local level have curbed the pollution that volunteers are finding. So that's really fantastic. I'm going to give it a second in case anyone is scanning the QR code. And then for Virginia's foam phase out, I couldn't leave out some of the great resources that are out there. I'm sure folks are familiar with these, and I really hope you are already, but just in case, I feel like it's worth mentioning that DEQ has a really awesome sort of landing page with all the information you need about Virginia's phase out and the timing and resources for vendors and things like that. And then Clean Virginia Waterways has a fantastic landing page with literally everything you could ever want to know about plastic foam, about the phase out, about tools for businesses. It's just a fantastic resource. So there's a QR code and a link there because it's a really easy to remember URL. So just wanted to plug those because I think more people should know about them. But hopefully everyone on this call already does. I'm just going to assume that that's the case. And then finally, I would love to use my captive audience to ask you all to make sure that you have added your organization's name to this sign-on letter in support of a federal foam ban. The letter closes on Friday, so you have a few more days to sign. And this is one link that I will definitely be dropping in the chat. You don't have to ask for it. But this is just a brief letter that will be sent to Congress next month to sort of urge them to keep up the pressure and keep moving the bill forward so that we can see it really grow by the end of this congressional session at the end of 2026. We never really anticipated it would pass this session, but who knows what will happen with the composition of Congress. We want this version of the bill to sort of amass as many co-sponsors as it can in this first session so that it's starting off on a really strong foot in 2027. It's hopefully reintroduced. So that is that letter, which again, I'll paste in the chat. But that's all I have for you. So thank you so much for your time and attention and your emojis. Really appreciated the engagement. You're welcome to reach out to me directly. My email is cdavis@oceana.org. And again, just a plug for Oceana's foam report if you want to read it yourself, which I would recommend. I think it's a good read. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Joe, I don't know how we're doing on time, but I'm happy to answer any questions if people have them.
Thank you, Claudia. Yeah, we have plenty of time. I did see a hand. That might have been a mistake, Sasha.
That was a mistake. I wanted to thank Claudia for just a great presentation today. So,
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I figured. Thanks, Sasha. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tasneem Binti Shohid. I'm an executive intern for Keep Norfolk Beautiful. Claudia, do you have any information that after the ban is being effective and the vendors are not interested to follow it, is there any plan for the city they're going to import on this?
Yeah, I think there's specific information about sort of the consequences for lack of compliance on that DEQ landing page. Let me just grab the link. I don't know off the top of my head what the fine is right away or how you would report it. But yeah, it looks at first glance, it looks like there is a link you can use to file a complaint if a business isn't complying with the foam ban right away. And my guess, the way that it's worked in other states is for a few months, there's a grace period. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thanks, Claudia. It does definitely depend. Oh, did Ellie enter in the chat?
Ellie said $50 is the fine.
Okay. And enforcement really goes look like city by city. And DEQ just encourages you to reach out to them if you have any specific questions.
Thank you.
First, Karen, go ahead.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much, Claudia. It was excellent. I learned a lot. This question's a little above my pay grade, but I'm interested. When you're asking, for example, you take a state like Montana, and you have so many business owners in Montana, and maybe left-leaning environmentalists, and you're trying to pass any kind of plastic ban. My intuition is that the Republican right business-minded people are saying, we manufacture this plastic product, whatever it is. And I've heard kind of gossip about this. It would be too expensive for us to begin manufacturing cardboard containers. I've heard that before. Are you hearing that or running into those kinds of conversations where the conservatives are saying, sure, we understand this is toxic, but in order for our plant to manufacture something more eco-friendly would be expensive? And then I'm wondering, should we start offering some sort of subsidies to these business owners to get them on board? Have you heard talk of this?
Not quite from the perspective of the manufacturing, but I definitely have heard that argument, like on behalf of small business owners, right? I think that's like a really common one that we hear a lot, which is like, this is too much of a burden on small business owners who have to make the switch to heavier or different materials when foam is so cheap and lightweight and easy to store. I think our like frequent response to that is just that the upfront cost might be greater, but ultimately, and I mean, like, especially if you're switching to something durable or a durable like cup system or takeout system, that's a big upfront cost, but you'll make it back pretty quickly when you don't have to rebuy materials. But I think there's also a big cost saving that is not often accounted for in like the waste management. And because foam is so bulky, it's very expensive to manage, right? You have to like haul a lot more of it than some other materials. So that's sort of like the most common back and forth on that note that we have. As far as manufacturing, like I really wouldn't know. I mean, like I don't think a foam plant can switch to like manufacturing paper cups, for example. I just think that's not like a one-to-one translation that they could make. But we're honestly like not hearing arguments from the industry as much as we are hearing arguments on behalf of, not from small business owners, on behalf of small business owners that I think is very much promoted by the industry. So it's like that's a bit of a nuance. But I will say in Montana, I think there are a lot of people on the right who really care about public lands, really care about environmental health, and don't want to see it trashed. And I think that was a big component of getting that foam ban passed in the first place, which is why it's unfortunate that the governor vetoed it.
Yes, thank you. I feel as though we have to take away all the excuses, from the bottom up for people. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Claudia. Any other questions? Claudia, I was wondering if you had some advice on, you had that chart process of political will. How does that process and what you've dealt with the Farewell to Foam Act, how does it translate or transfer to other campaigns, whether it's state or federal level?
Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty oversimplification. I admittedly did it very quickly, but I think it's like a pretty common, or it's an easily translatable visualization to a tool that we use a lot at Oceana called the Midwest Academy strategy chart. And the Midwest Academy is a really long-standing organizing and like training group that has used this sort of methodology to accomplish a lot of different types of campaign victories. So I'll also find a link for that and paste it in the chart in the chat. But essentially what the chart does is move you from sort of your big picture goal and helps you break it up into smaller sort of segments that are achievable. And eventually you work your way sort of down to your tactics, which is just like having meetings, sending letters, getting an LTE in the newspaper, you know, sort of like what are all the activities that I need to accomplish to win this sort of like one component of my long-term goal. And then how will that sort of build up over time towards the long-term goal? It's sort of like the concept of eating an elephant one bite at a time, right? So I really love that tool. It's like works really well for me and others at Oceana. It's definitely something that we apply across all of our different campaigns, no matter sort of the level of government or the issue area. And the great thing about it is that it's really tailorable to like exactly what parameters you're working within for that campaign or that issue, whether it's like the decision makers or the opponents that you're up against, or like the amount of money you have. There's all room for sort of you to make note of all of that so that you can make informed decisions about what you actually have room to do, right, for your campaign, or like what sort of support you need to recruit if you don't.
That's really cool. I've never heard of that tool. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Let me find a link and I'll paste it in the chat because I love sharing it with people.
Aaron, did you have another question?
No, I'm sorry, hit the wrong button. Thank you.
Oh, no worries, no problem. DVW intern, is that Riley?
Sorry, Joe, it's Christina.
Christina.
I'm in disguise. I just wanted to comment that I was given the opportunity to do a fly-in with the Ocean Conservancy last month to talk to our Virginia representatives on the Hill, and every single one of them, we talked to 6 different, well, the staff anyway, representatives and Senator Kane's office, and it was all positive. They all understood that foam is an issue, and I had the opportunity to talk about some of our marine debris surveys and what we're seeing during the International Coastal Cleanup, and you know, I definitely got positive feedback, and you know, whether or not they're going to, you know, vote on it or sign on to the bill is another thing, but certainly there was a good degree of understanding that specific material is pretty harmful to the environment. So I just came away from that like with a little bit of hope, because it was, you know, both sides of the aisle and from all over the state. So it was really good, really positive.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Christina. Rebecca, go ahead.
Hey, sorry if this is already, I joined late, but did I hear you say that that any violations of the foam ban are up to the municipality to enforce?
Yes, I believe I had said the way enforcement happens is up to the locality in Virginia. It looks like a standard fine for violations is $50. If anyone has more information, please feel free to come off mute.
Hey Joe, it's
Recorded.
Sarah from Keep Norfolk Beautiful.
Sarah.
We've been going about this in round and round regionally, and DEQ is definitely kicking it back down to the locality to handle. I only know of York County currently, and I don't know if Sam McNeil is on the call. They are the only locality I know of right now who has created a mechanism and some policies to legislate the $50 a day fine for the waiver. We in Norfolk currently don't have a mechanism in place. So I'm just going forward sort of in a don't ask, don't tell sort of method right now, as we move forward with just getting the information out about the ban. We are, as a region, have created kits to provide restaurants who register through our local Ask HR Green, which is set up through our Hampton Roads Planning District, that they can register to receive a kit of materials that is alternative packaging. And so far, our office alone in Norfolk has delivered somewhere in the neighborhood of about 20. And with the exception of one business, everybody has sort of met us with the fact that they felt like they have had a good amount of time to on-ramp new package material and off-ramp any foam that they have had. So I just wanted to mention that because I found that to be sort of a positive sign on the small business level, since this is definitely impacting small businesses in this phase, this final phase.
That's awesome. We have a similar program with the foam-free kits statewide because we know Ask HR Green has Hampton Roads covered. And we've delivered about 50 kits across the state, and it's just good that we've gotten so much interest, and we've had a lot of, like I said earlier, we had a lot of really good partnerships. And you're right. I hope we've provided a lot of resources to these businesses and with ample time. Thank you so much for filling us in. April.
Yeah, so I was just thinking that, how it seems like maybe some of the bigger businesses out there will just quickly and have switched over just to plastic for their to-go containers. And, on the state level and on the national level with Oceana, I guess we're, kind of trying to promote compostable or more recyclable foodware items. But has that been well received by some of the larger businesses? Or, I feel like that might still be kind of a challenge.
Do you mean like just the switch at all?
Yeah, just to switch it off from foam to another type of packaging. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like a learning curve in earlier phases, like states that we've worked in where it hasn't been in effect for so long. It definitely takes like maybe a few years for people to really get on board with it. I can say anecdotally in DC, there's a foam ban on the books, and a lot of the restaurants have switched, like you said, to like hard plastic, right? Like a black plastic container with a lid,
Right.
which is like not ideal.
Yeah.
But then like in California, for example, where a foam ban in some localities has been on the books for like close to 20 years now. It's just like the way of life. Like folks have accepted that it's like how business works. And you, I don't want to say will be like shamed or judged, but it's just like, it's very noticeable if you're not in compliance, right? So I think part of it, like, yeah, part of it is an issue of over availability of just like other plastic items, and finding loopholes. And part of it is just like a time question, which is why it's just important to get legislation passed and in effect sooner rather than later, right? But as far as like, yeah, working with individual businesses, I don't have like a lot of great tips other than just helping them like explore alternatives and helping them understand the importance, or if it comes to it, getting them slapped on the wrist. But the Clean Virginia Waterways Foam Resources landing page does have a couple calculators, right? A couple different, maybe just one, website from Debris Free Oceans, and they have like a calculator where you can put in like, you know, I buy like 1,000 foam takeout containers every month. How much more would it actually cost to switch to cardboard or something compostable? And that can be really helpful for folks.
Okay, thank you very much.
I was really excited when someone told us about that tool. Immediately went on the website. Awesome. Any other questions? We just have a few minutes left. Yeah, Christina.
Completely off topic. Claudia, are you guys working on any kind of skip the stuff law?
Not at the national level. There may have been a skip the stuff like component in the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which was like a big comprehensive package that has run through Congress a couple times now, but not this session. But we have worked on skip the stuff several times at the state and local level. I worked briefly at the end of the skip the stuff campaign in New York City, which is very exciting. So we'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Claudia. It was great to hear about all of those campaigns and all the resources. Thank you everyone for your awesome questions. Next month, we're going to do things a little bit differently, where we're just going to have a roundtable. So feel free to show up and give your thoughts on the VP3N network. We can just kind of chat and hear about summer plans for stuff in Virginia, especially relevant because we have Plastic Free July. So let us know what you're doing for that. And then we will take an August hiatus from the VP3N and resume in September, but look forward to our discussion next month. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.